Colourpop's formula when it comes to like some of their like really metallic and glittery shades is really good. Happy video day, guys, and well, happy Make Up Your Mind day. We're gonna be doing another Make Up Your Mind today because there was a new release from Colourpop, the Mulan collection. I don't know if you guys saw this. This released, was it last week or the week before? I don't know, just recently. So from the whole collection, the palette actually really interested me. The palette is $22 US. I do not believe it is available right now on the Colourpop website because it was sold out the last time I looked at it. And I do know Colourpop had done a stop on their shipping for a little while, so I'm not 100% sure if that's still going or not. But either way, that gives us some time to make up your mind, to decide whether we need this palette or not. So we're gonna be doing a make up your mind on this palette. I'm gonna be showing you guys the palettes in my collection that I was able to find that I think look similar to this palette. So if you're new here and you don't know what make up your mind is, basically what we do is I'm trying to find similar hues in my collection to see if I actually own a palette before I buy it. So I'm just gonna look through my collection. I'm gonna look for my different palettes. I'm gonna see which colors I can find that are very similar. I'm gonna see if I kind of own this palette already and whether I really need to pick up this one or not. And maybe you guys will have the same palettes as me, but if you don't, you might even have palettes that have even more similar colors in your collections. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Let's go ahead and let's go through all of this. I'm gonna show you guys the palettes that I found the colors in. I'm gonna show you guys everything. And before we do that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're new here and you like these kind of videos. I do have an entire playlist because I've been doing so many of these videos. I actually do them weekly and I have a bunch of different palettes that you guys can catch up on over here if you guys check out my playlist. So let's get into this one. Right. All right, so let's see the results. These are the results and this is what I was able to do. So for this one, I do think I found this palette pretty good. Some of the hues, not perfect, not 100%. Ooh, one of my light bulbs on my big light is going out. So I feel like I was able to do pretty decent with these colors because I was able to find them in a few different palettes. Now, when I first was looking at this palette and the colors that they used for it, I kind of was drawn to it and I kind of went like, ooh, this is kind of cool. And then as I kind of like stepped away from it and I looked at it a little longer, it started to remind me of some other palettes that I currently own. So I did pull a few of those palettes and I'm going to show them to you guys right now. The first one is actually from Raine and it's this one right here called the Queen of Hearts. The other one is Tati Beauty Textured Neutrals. I actually got two tones, I think, from that palette. I jumped into the ABH by Carli Bybel palette, and finally ABH Subculture. So those are the four palettes that I used to basically create this palette for myself. I will tell you guys that there is one palette in here that I feel has a lot of these tones, like a lot. You need to jump into a few other ones in order to get like all of the tones, but there was like a lot of them coming out of one palette. Let's not waste time. We've got 15 shades here. Let's get into what I found out and what palettes I used. So let's start off with the first row and let's start off with the first color. So for the first color, I actually jumped into Raine. If you guys see this color right here called Crown. This color has a very similar hue to what I'm seeing inside of the Colourpop one. Now I will tell you that the texture of this one is probably not 100% the same because I feel like the Raine one is a very satiny metallic. It's like very soft metallic. And the one that I see coming out of Colourpop looks like one of their Super Shock metallic-y shades. I don't know if it's Super Shock or not, but this one has a similar hue. It's definitely not going to be the same exact texture, but it's a similar hue. I looked through my collection like for something that was like really spot on to like the texture of the Colourpop one, and I really couldn't find that. As I was going through these colors, I actually just decided, you know what, I want to just look for the hues of colors here and having like a similarity in texture, but I know I'm not going to find 100% the texture. Colourpop's formula when it comes to like some of their like really metallic and glittery shades is really good. So the one inside of the Queen of Hearts is not going to have that same oof factor that I could see that the one in Colourpop has, but definitely this to me is more of a shade to use in like the inner corners. I would add a little bit of like an accent. I don't see myself using this as like a lid shade or anything like that. So even though it's really, really cool for my personal usage. I would definitely be using this for limited use. So if we keep on going, I jumped into color Raine again for the next color. What I did for this color is I jumped into this color called Air right here. So Air has a little bit of like that peachy undertoned, little bit of brown color, and it looks really, really similar. So when I'm looking at the one in Colourpop, it's darker than this, and I almost feel like if I mix brown with this, it wouldn't be the right color. So I just dabbed into Princess just to kind of shift the tone a little bit with a dab of purple, and I feel like that kind of made a more similar hue to what I'm seeing in the swatch from Colourpop. Now, that being said, I do really, really like this color on its own. It's such a cool color. Is it going to be pretty close to the Colourpop one? I believe it would be. This is also one of those tones that you would use underneath. You're going to kind of blend a million colors on top of it. So I feel like this one's going to be close enough. So the next one looks like it's like one of those mattes with a little bit of glitter in it. And when I was thinking of that, I just thought Tati Beauty, because Tati Beauty is the one that I just recently purchased that I remembered having like those type of matty glitters in it. So what I did was I grabbed the color Ritual very lightly on my finger, and I said, well, that's a little bit of a darker tone than what I want. So I just grabbed a little bit of Soothe and mixed them together. When you mix Soothe and Ritual together, you get a very similar hue to what I'm seeing in Colourpop. So I do think that those two mixed together is going to give me something pretty spot on. These kind of glittery shadows, you guys have probably heard me say a million times. I love the way they look when you swatch them. I love the way they look when you like look at them, but when you put them on your lids, I'm not a huge fan of them. I don't know. They just don't stick good on my lids. Everybody has different oils and stuff that'll keep things on. Mine, it just doesn't like them. It just doesn't like this type of glitter. So I'm not a huge fan of that type of texture anyways, but I do feel like I have enough of it in the Tati Beauty one, so I'm good on that one. So for the next color, I was kind of looking through different colors that I have, and the only thing that I feel like worked the best was jumping into the ABH palette with Carli Bybel and getting this color called Boyet, and it's kind of like a deep brown, but I wanted to add a little bit of a purple hint to it to kind of lighten it up, but to keep it cool. So when I add this color Bybel on top and I mix them together, I feel like the undertone creates a very similar undertone to what I am seeing inside the Colourpop one. Those two mixed together, when you start blending them and you kind of dab into each one of them, I feel like they are going to create a similar look. However, I do think the one from Colourpop is lighter, like it's a lighter hint, but I mean, at the same time, that does not mean that when I create this color, I need to add so much deepness to it. I can kind of back away a little bit and maybe create something a little bit closer to Colourpop. But and then we move on to the next one. So this one's gold, a pretty gold, a glittery gold. I love Colourpop's formula in this. Like if you guys look at the picture of the palette, it just looks like it's glittering off of the palette. It just looks so gorgeous. I don't think I have a formula exactly like that, but I remembered in Carli Bybel, there's this beautiful color called My Angels. When this thing swatches like gold. Like it's so gorgeous. I love it. So when I swatched it, I was like, that reminds me of it. I feel like Colourpop's has a little bit more glitter in it. So all I did was just grab a little bit of Mod from this palette and put it on top just to lighten it up a tad. And it did create a similar hue to the one from Colourpop, but I do feel like Colourpop added a little bit of pizzazz in there with a little like glitteriness. At least it looks like that way from the actual palette. But in the swatch, you can't really tell as much, but I do feel like the tone overall, I definitely have. This is one that I feel like the Colourpop formula is probably pretty unique to what I have. Okay, so now this one actually I was on the hunt for, and I didn't want to add more palettes. So I decided I wanted to make this color. So what I did was I jumped into Colored Raine and I got this color called Royal Prerogative. This color is a more warm brown, but I needed it to be a little bit more orange. So I jumped into Empress, and if you mix a little bit of Empress into this Royal Prerogative color, you start to create a brown orange, which looked so similar to the color that I'm seeing inside of Colourpop. Now, this is like one of those colors that you can play with. So since you're creating your own color, you can add more orange in or more brown in until you create the perfect shade. And when you're blending them on your lid, you would start off with one color, then you would add another color on top, and then you start blending them together and they start creating a color. I feel like you're going to be able to create a color super similar to this using those two colors in this palette. So that color I think I'm pretty good on too. I think I have it as well. And then the last color was one that I looked in a few different palettes, and I ended up just saying, you know, this looks similar and maybe a little bit off, but similar to what I saw in Carli Bybel in this color called Aurora. This color may be more pink than the one that's coming out of the Colourpop one. It gives you like a pinky, orangey, peachy tone, and it kind of shifts a little bit. So I feel like depending on how you look at it, it may look more like the Colourpop one, but I don't use it that often. I do like it a lot, but I don't use it that often. So it's a tone that's very pretty. It's just not... It's not the reason I would buy this palette, and I do feel like maybe it's one of the tones that I'm missing that I couldn't find 100%, and I could have maybe jumped into like the Natasha Denona Sunrise and maybe found it, and I probably could have found it in there, but yeah, I feel like I have it okay right now. So that's the first row, and I have to say from the first row, I'm not super excited with the color selection that I'm seeing here. I think it's pretty, but I mean, it's not like... oh my gosh, I need you right now. Like when I swatched them all and I kind of started looking at them and thinking of color story, I started to think, well, like this palette right here, I can kind of create very similar looks to what I'm looking at in this first section from the Colourpop one. So right now I'm leaning towards I kind of have it, you know? So now this section has a mixture. It has a little bit of coolness to it, but also has some warmth to it. But the first color was a black with glitter in it, and I automatically just thought of Tati Beauty, because Tati Beauty had this color sequin formula, which is this right here in Mercury, that because it's black but it has like silver glitters in it, it almost appears a little bit gray. It gave me a very similar swatch to what I was seeing in Colourpop, so I feel like this color, if not exact, is very similar to what I'm seeing in Colourpop. So definitely for me, I feel like that one is one that I have and I don't really need another one of. I don't really jump into this palette for that sequin shade that often, like at all, just because of little glitters in it, and sometimes like having to control those little sequins and where they end up and where they don't end up can be kind of annoying. So I don't really jump into those sequin shades like that often. So that one for me, I'm like, I really didn't care if I didn't find it, but I feel like I have it pretty spot. So the next one, I decided to jump right back into colored Raine, and this color right here called Royal Highness looks really similar to what I see from the Colourpop one. It may have a little bit more of like a purple shift to it, whereas the Colourpop one might be a little bit more warm. It might have a similar undertone that you may not be able to tell a huge difference. I feel like I really like this color, but I really honestly think the one in here, like this kind of tone, is more flattering in my opinion than the one that I'm looking at in the Colourpop one. I like the fact that this one leans a little cooler. I don't know. Personal preference, you know? Okay, so now they're kind of switching it up a little bit for me, because I'm like, wait, what is a gray doing in here? Like, you know, like this is just like, what is going on here? So I had to jump into Subculture. Inside of Subculture, there's this color called Mercury. I honestly think Mercury swatched so similar to what I'm seeing in the swatch from Colourpop. So I feel like if you have Subculture, you definitely have the gray, which I love gray. I hardly ever use it. I did use it on this eye look today. I used it for the outer edge. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you bought the Mulan palette, you could probably create a look similar to this one, because I used only the colors that I swatched. I feel like I have gray now, because I bought a single from Makeup Geek of gray, and I have the gray in Subculture that I hardly ever use, so I think I'm good on grays. So now the next color, actually, I was going to jump into my Pat McGrath palette, my Mothership 5, and I almost did that, and I said, well, why? If you already kind of have a very similar reddish tone inside of here, this color, Noble Woman, from the colored Raine, is a little bit more pink than it is red, but it's pretty similar. When you put it on the lid, I mean, I have it in my inner portion of my lid. Can't you guys see that it looks pretty red? It looks pretty red when applied. Now, if I really wanted to be like spot on perfect, I could have just jumped into my Pat McGrath Mothership 5, where I do have a really nice red metallic, but I almost felt like it wasn't worth pulling it out, because this one, when applied, it looks super red. So I feel like I have that color in a few different palettes, and you guys may think the eye look I'm wearing right now looks cool, but I will tell you guys, I hardly ever put like a red metallic on my lids, because it's just not easy to wear. Like, it's fun to put on, but like to match this with like an outfit and everything is a little bit more difficult, you know? So that one, I'm like, I have enough of this metallic red, and if I'm going to use metallic red, I'm going to use the one in the Pat McGrath Mothership 5, which cost me like $1 million, and I should use, you know, Okay, so then for the next one, I was looking at a few different palettes, and I ended up just going right back into this one right here. And if you go into the color Dutchess right here from the colored Raine palette, this color looks kind of on point. Like, I feel like this one might be a little darker than the one that you're seeing in the Colourpop version, but it's similar. Like, it's almost the same, that I feel when blended and all that stuff starts happening, you're not going to be able to tell a huge difference. So I definitely think that this one may be one that I feel like I have. And I have like these warm tone browns. If I started looking through my collection, I started to notice how many warm tone browns I had, and it's a pretty good amount of warm tone browns. So we're down to 3 more. We're down to 3 more to make this worth it for me. And the next one actually was one that I kind of went, wait. This color looks like something I've seen, and it's inside a Carli Bybel palette. So this is the ABH Carli Bybel. This color Boy up here is so beautiful. Oh my god, I would like literally put this thing all over my lids. I love this palette, by the way, and I think it's on sale at Sephora. I'm gonna link it if it's still on sale, but like, this is such a good palette. The only one I can't use from here is this one right here because it's a pigment, and pigments irritate my eye, but the rest of it isn't, and I love it. But anyways, back to subject. This is a really, really pretty color. I really like it, and I do think that it looks really similar to the color that they included here in the new Colourpop one. I love the ABH formula. I do think that the one in Colourpop looks like it may have a little bit more pizzazz to it, like I've said about some of the metallics in this palette, but I'm okay with not getting the pizzazz, you know? Now we're down to 2. We're down to 2 to change this for me, and when I was looking at this palette, I kind of looked down here and I said, wait a minute, this color called Boyet looks really similar to the next color, and when I swatched it, I go, wow, it really is, it like really is. So this color right here is a really cool tone brown. Love this to smoke out the outer edge and also for the lower lash line. It's such a cool color, and I do feel like I own it, and I really like I said, the ABH formula. It's like really, really good. So I have it right now. Finally, the last color, and the last color was hard to find. This one, I stayed looking at all these palettes, and I go, well, am I gonna have to add another palette in for one color? And I really took a while to really think of this, but as I started looking at this palette, I looked at this color called Dawn up here, if you guys see it, and Dawn is a really pretty light tone. But if you add a little bit of mercury into it and you mix them together, you start to create a color that is like a beigey gray that's starting to morph more into the color that I'm seeing from Colourpop. And as I started mixing them together, I go, oh wow, like this could look the same. This is a unique color that I feel like they put in here. It's not a color that I'm seeing all the time. I can kind of create it, and it's not a color that's gonna like make me want to buy it, and if it was, it would be more worth it as a single than like to buy this entire palette of eyeshadow when it looks like I've kind of found a few of them, you know what I mean? So that is my final results on every single one of these. I did ask you guys if you guys wanted me to do this Mulan one, and I came through, I did it. So that is my final results, and that is what I'm seeing here. And I'm gonna have to tell you guys, like, I created this eye look, and this would be a look that you could create with this Mulan palette. I matched the lip because I know there's a red lip that kind of go with this whole theme. I love Disney themed things. I think that this is like the perfect palette for somebody who loves Mulan. The vibe of the Disney character in this palette. It's a really cool palette, and it feels like it's actually a palette that you can use. Like, they used very useful colors. But that being said, if you guys have a lot of palettes like me, you may own a lot of these colors. So that is the reason I'm gonna sit here right now and tell you guys I have made up my mind. I am not gonna be purchasing the Mulan palette when it gets back in stock or whatever, just because I personally feel like the colors themselves are nice. I don't think that it's anything like very different. Like, if you have a lot of palettes, you may have a lot of these tones, and at the same time, it's just not a color selection I usually wear. Like I said, the pop of color in here is a red, and I really think that reds look so cool in palettes, but I don't use them that often, and they sit there, and I have a very expensive palette that has a red in it that called my attention, and I hardly ever wear it. So I think this is a cool palette for anybody who is definitely a huge Mulan fan, or if they really like the colors in here, or if they just want to add some cool browns into their collection. It does have a lot of nice browns in there. Love Colourpop's formula, but at the end of the day, I've got to use what I've got. I've got to use what I've got. These palettes are going to go bad on me, and I have made up my mind that I am going to skip on this one. So anyways, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you guys did, don't forget to leave me your comments below. And I want to know from you guys, if you found a palette that has better colors in it than I found, leave that down below. I want to know which colors it is that you found that looked more similar. What did you guys find? I want to know all of your thoughts down below. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.